What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of The Truth About the Market. I'm your host, Jason Zilberbrand, president of VREF. I've appraised aircraft for the FAA, SpaceX, Fortune 50 companies, lenders, operators, famous estates, private owners around the world. I've owned aircraft, I've sold aircraft, I've operated aircraft. I've watched deals fall apart for reasons that never make it into a broker listing. And this podcast is sponsor free, no paid for opinions, no commercial pressure, just the truth, even when it's uncomfortable. It's the week of New Year's Eve, and I appreciate the fact that you are here with me to listen to yet another podcast. And today's episode is one that I've been asked to do more than any other topic in the last 6 months. Brokers want to know, lenders want to know, operators want to know. OEMs pretend they already know, but they don't. And consumers have no idea what's coming. The question is simple. Is aviation ready for artificial intelligence? But the answer, well, that's a little more complicated. Aviation is a highly regulated, deeply conservative industry. It is slow to adopt change. It's allergic to risk. It's obsessed with documentation, and it's built on systems that, if we were being truly or brutally honest, haven't evolved drastically since the 1970s. But AI is coming anyway, and it's coming fast. The irony is aviation needs AI more than most industries, but it also resists AI more aggressively than almost all of them. And so let's break this down the only way I know how, by telling the truth. So if you listen to OEM presentations and MRO webinars and venture-backed aviation startups, or the occasional overly enthusiastic broker who just discovered ChatGPT, you think AI is going to instantly eliminate unscheduled downtime and predict every failure under the sun. Hell, it's even going to solve supply chain delays, and it's going to optimize everybody's inventory. Everyone's going to be making more money. Everyone's going to be operating safer. And, a lot of this is to create market transparency and probably brew your coffee and file your flight plan. But in all honesty, AI is pitched as a miracle cure to aviation inefficiency. It's the new blockchain. It's the new NFT. It's the new disruption. And if you saw me, I had my finger quotes in the air. We've heard this before. Aviation loves to announce the future long before the future arrives. The paperless cockpit was announced 25 years ago, folks. Some operators still carry paper Jeppesen binders. You know them. I know them. We all love them. Some mechanics still print out digital log entries so they can sign them with a pen. And half the shops in the country run Excel documents with things named aircraft final 3.xls. The sales pitch for AI in aviation is immaculate. The reality, well, it's a little bit different. And so let's take a look at the hard truth, because the data is a disaster, and AI is only as good as the data you feed it. And aviation's data quality ranges from usable to absolute dumpster fire. So let's talk about why. First off, there's fragmentation everywhere. And it makes sense if you think about it. Every OEM has their own data platform. Every tracking system has its own proprietary structure. Every MRO keeps its own style of records. Hell, even every broker keeps their own comps. And every operator stores information differently, and none of these systems talk to each other in a clean, standardized way. And so that leads us to no universal data format. There's no standardization, especially when it comes to things like camp and Traxall and flight docs and Sierra Tracks and all the different maintenance tracking systems. And then you have all the OEM programs too. They're all completely different. And then on top of that, yet another layer, maintenance shops, because most of them hand type entries in ways that make spell check cry. And the ones that are big enough to have automation or using systems, you guess it, those are proprietary as well. So when someone says AI is going to analyze maintenance records, I always ask, well, which records? And which ones are going to be formatted how and by whom and stored where? And what decade are we talking about? Because if they weren't typed in, the real obstacle between AI being a solution and AI being a guess is not computing power, it's records. Aviation runs on decades of paper logbooks and scanned PDFs and handwritten entries. And these are inconsistent formats, and they have missing pages and human shorthand that made sense to one mechanic on one day in 1987. digitizing those records is not the same as understanding them. OCR doesn't solve this problem. OCR converts images into text, but it does not validate the accuracy or the context or the intent. A misread digit, a smudged tack time, or a handwritten note like OK per SB, that can be interpreted a dozen different ways. And AI doesn't know which one is correct unless the underlying data is structured, standardized, and verified. And then when AI is fed clean, consistent, normalized data, then it can identify patterns and it can predict outcomes. And it can surface risks with incredible accuracy. When it's fed imperfect, fragmented records, it confidently produces answers that look precise, but they're fundamentally uncertain. That's the danger. AI doesn't replace bad records, it amplifies them. Look, without rigorous data hygiene and human review and a standardized schema, AI becomes a sophisticated guessing engine, not a decision making tool. And the gap between those two outcomes is where aviation is stuck today. Until records are truly digitized and not just scanned, AI will remain potential but not proof because human error still runs the show. Bad data equals bad outputs. And AI doesn't magically fix typos. AI doesn't confidently repeat mistakes humans have embedded into systems for decades. Look, if your logbooks include mistaken times and incorrect component cycles and sloppy maintenance entries or lost entries or missing entries, how is AI going to solve that? How is AI going to interpret that faster than a human? Did you know VREF does more appraisals than anyone else in the market? With thousands of aircraft appraisals completed every year, why trust anybody else? Go to vref.com to learn more. Look, this is a regulatory game twister because the FAA is not anti-technology. It just moves at a speed of paperwork and committee meetings and conservative risk tolerance that's just molasses slow. And since AI is a black box, and aviation hates black boxes, not the flight recorder kind, those are fine, but the kind where you can't explain exactly why something happened, then regulators can't certify what they can't audit, and insurers can't cover what they can't evaluate, and so on and so forth. And so while the hype says AI co-pilots, the regulators say, hang on, folks, let's talk in 10 years. And in all seriousness, allowing AI tools into aviation systems means granting access to flight data and operational data and maintenance systems with immense cyber risk. It's just enormous how much risk we are really opening ourselves up to. And many aviation infrastructures are simply not hardened for modern threats, let alone AI assisted vulnerabilities. This alone is going to slow down adoption. Trust me. And even with all these issues, AI is absolutely going to reshape aviation because the question isn't if, it's how fast and in what areas. So, what I'd like to do is let's look at what AI is going to hit first and hard in transforming or will transform soon sectors in our industry. And I think the first is predictive maintenance because this is the holy grail. OEMs know it, operators know it, engine program providers are afraid of it. AI can predict failures before they can occur using trends across thousands of aircraft instantly. And that means fewer AOG events, fewer unscheduled, fewer diagnostic hours wasted, fewer time on the ground waiting for engines to be removed and reinstalled, better parts planning, reduced operating costs. And this alone is going to change the economics of maintenance reserves. But there's a catch because the OEMs guard their data like national secrets, and Honeywell and Pratt and GE, they have telemetry and they treat it like it's proprietary treasure, and they should. But the truth is, until the OEMs open that vault and predictive maintenance becomes a thing that we're all talking about every day, all day, it's going to remain an unrealized dream because everybody's way too protective over their systems. But, the second place I think we're going to see a major impact with AI is real-time operational intelligence because AI can help dispatchers and AI can help pilots make better decisions. It can optimize fuel route planning. It can evaluate alternates faster than a human can. It can predict weather with greater precision. And it might not seem like a big deal if you're just flying around a 172, but for company like NetJets, that's a massive difference in the outcome of economics. They can also assess system anomalies instantly, and they can provide real time safety diagnostics, things that humans just aren't capable of doing. And when I say AI, I mean, we're talking about based on 3 million similar profiles that risk curve goes up 600% in the next 20 minutes, right? That's what AI can say. That's what AI can do to change things. And that's a game changer. You know, the third place that I think we're going to see major AI input, similar to what we were just talking about, is in the training and simulation sector. Because I think AI co-pilots inside sims that adapt to how a student performs is absolutely coming. It's a matter of when. I think you're going to see augmented reality. I think you're going to imagine a simulator one day that says, you know, your scan pattern is weak on approach. Let's run it again. Or you missed the torque trend 3 times. Let's correct that. I think that is the future. I also think it's going to happen, you know, in the next year or two. I really think it's going to happen quicker than people are ready for. In the next place I think you're going to see a major impact of AI is in the inventory and supply chain optimization, because I think that there is a bit of tongue in cheek, and you know, and obviously a lot of what we talk about. Sometimes I think we expect too much too quickly, but you know, operators do sit on sometimes tens of millions of dollars of parts inventory. And I think AI can actually identify what should be stocked versus what shouldn't be stocked. And I think eliminating that over ordering or not having parts that might not sell for 15 years, that determination of what is and what isn't moving is going to predict upcoming demand patterns. And look, it's going to reduce warehouse footprint. Who doesn't want that? Who doesn't want to save real money, especially for charter operators and fleet managers, right? I also think, you know, it's coming, and we've been doing it a lot, and we've been modeling a lot at VREF, but I think you're going to start seeing a lot of market forecasting and aircraft valuation stuff. Um, and there's a reason why VREF leads and why most AI startups don't ever get off the ground. And it's because aircraft valuation isn't a pricing exercise. It isn't a pattern recognition problem. That's not what we're talking about here, right? It's we're talking about economics and behavior and technical reality, and that's why VREF exists, and why most so-called AI evaluation platforms fundamentally misunderstand the problem they claim to solve. Look, VREF is built on decades of structured data and audited transactions and maintenance realities and market cycles and real world appraisal outcomes, not scraping listings, not using a scraping you know, browser to take data that probably doesn't belong to you because it's theft, and putting it into your own system, right? And I think that that's what a lot of these companies are doing now. They're scraping listings, they're reinventing comparables. There's no real inputs. There's no validated data. It's not being interpreted by a professional who understands what actually moves value, like something like a fleet aging or obsolescence or utilization or supportability or regulatory shifts or even human decision making. Uh, this is where VREF is already leading. You know, AI does not replace appraisers. And we've seen this in real estate. We've seen this in other personal property. Anyone claiming that it's either naive or selling something. And I'm telling you now, AI absolutely can replace bad data, and it absolutely can do biased pricing strategies. And it's a long-standing illusion that aircraft markets, you know, they move randomly or purely on emotion. And when AI is applied to a clean, structured data set, like what we have at VREF, with proper guardrails, it becomes a force multiplier. It identifies trends faster. It can surface anomalies earlier. It can remove noise that humans have historically tolerated. But now here's a problem. The aviation market is currently flooded with these AI startups built by brokers, and most of them, or if not all of them, are former clients, and they're opportunists, and they don't have their own data. And look, they're renting it and they're scraping it and they're misusing it. And where a broker takes that data and attempts to spin up their own AI valuation platform, they don't democratize transparency. They corrupt it, folks. Why? Because brokers are not neutral actors. Their incentives are transactional. They benefit from optimism and narrative pricing and selective comps and opacity, and feeding AI with biased intent and incomplete data sets or selectively filtered inputs doesn't create intelligence. It creates automated misinformation that looks authoritative, and it's not, because it's doing way more damage, way more harm than good. It introduces a false confidence into leading decision makers. It distorts operator expectations. It pollutes underwriting. It undermines trust and valuation as a discipline. And worse yet, it puts real money at risk under the guise of technology. The future of valuation is not human or AI. It's human judgment augmented by AI. And look, we're not letting it replace us, because it's not going to happen. When AI is built on verified data and it's governed by professional standards and it's used as an analytic tool rather than a sales weapon, accuracy improves, markets become more efficient, and risk is priced correctly. VREF isn't chasing AI hype. You have nothing to worry about. It's doing what the industry actually needs: structure first, intelligence second. Everything else is just noise, and the market will eventually punish it. And I can promise you, because things like fraud detection, which we're going to talk about next, that's really what AI is good at. But there's a whole liability side to this, and it is the elephant in the hangar. Want the unfiltered side of aviation? Hit subscribe and tell a friend who's shopping for a jet. We built this show for people who live and breathe aviation: brokers, lenders, appraisers, operators, buyers, sellers. If that's you, join the conversation. This podcast is powered by your curiosity and your trust, so keep sending your stories, your wins, and your horror deals. Before we jump into that, I do want to highlight one thing, because I do think that AI is so powerful that with fraud detection, AI is going to catch forged logbooks and missing inspections and falsified times and mismatched cycles and all of those issues that you pray and hope get caught at a pre-buy. For a lot of modernized aircraft that have digital record keeping that goes back since birth, AI is going to be your best protector. And I think it's going to terrify a small but amusing percentage of the industry. But I think that this is such a welcome change. I think every person that goes through a pre-buy wishes that this occurred, and it's going to. It's going to happen a lot sooner. So let's jump into liability and what happens when you use bad data, and the real elephant in the hangar, as I like to call it, because here's the real reason AI adoption in aviation is going to be slow. Nobody wants to own the downside when AI is wrong, folks, and it will be wrong. Aviation isn't social media. Errors don't cost clicks or engagement or likes. They cost aircraft and capital and lives and the years and years of litigation that nobody wants to talk about. And that's why liability, not technology, is the real break on AI adoption. Now, layer in a second problem: where the data comes from. A growing number of aviation IA platforms are built on scraped transaction and listing sites and flight tracking data and loosely inferred market activity. Some rely on flight-aware style movement data. Others scrape controller and trade-a-plane or broker listings and pretend that asking prices are transactions, and none of that data was designed for valuation. None of it was designed for underwriting. None of it has safety-critical decision-making, and much of it exists in a legal gray area to begin with. And that's not intelligence. That's interference stacked on interference. So let's walk through why this matters. An AI system trained on incomplete maintenance history or inferred utilization says a component is likely fine, and then it fails, or there's an incident. Who gets sued? The operator who relied on it? Maybe. The maintenance shop? Probably. The AI vendor? Oh, this is going to be a good one, because the data source that never authorized its use. And what about the insurance company? Well, the answer is everybody. Everybody's getting sued. Let's look at another one. AI recommends a flight decision. An AI tool built on flight tracking patterns and weather correlations recommends continuing a flight, and then all of a sudden the conditions deteriorate, and the worst case scenario, there's an accident. Now liability fractures across pilots and operators and vendors and data providers, and many of whom were never consented to their data being used in this way. You have to think about this, folks. It's going to happen. It's a matter of when. And I'm going to talk about something before we call it for this week's episode. Let's look at scenario 3. How about an aviation tool misprices an aircraft, right? You have an AI valuation platform that's trained on scraped listings or unverified transaction estimates, and it supports a $15 million loan on an airplane that's only worth 12. And then the loan defaults within 30 days or 60 days or 90 days. Who was wrong? Was the AI wrong, or was the data never valid in the first place? Did the bank rely on it improperly? This is where amateur AI does damage. It injects false precision into financial decisions, and it shifts risk onto parties who never understood the model's limitations, much less the people behind it, much less their intent. Oh, people, you got to make better decisions. When AI starts influencing things like fleet planning and airspace flow or traffic management, a single bad assumption can cascade across the system, and who pays for it? Who pays for that systematic failure? Right now, no one wants that answer because we don't have one. And until data provenance and authorization, accuracy, and accountability are solved, AI in aviation isn't a solution. It's a liability generator with a good user interface, and the industry knows it. And that's why people are so slow to adopt it. And somewhere in the background of all of this, oh, you know it, the lawyers are watching quietly and they're smiling. They're waiting for the first AI assisted maintenance failure or the first AI backed valuation that blows up on a loan or the first algorithm that told us to, because that defense that collapses under discovery. And because when AI decisions go wrong in aviation, the paperwork alone will feed litigation for years. The irony is many of these same attorneys preparing for that wave of already letting Chat GPT draft briefs, summarize depositions, and research case law for them. AI is fine when it's a productivity tool. It only becomes a problem when someone pretends it's judgment. That's when the billable hours really start. The popular narrative says aviation resists AI because pilots don't want to give up control. That's convenient. And it's also mostly wrong because commercial aviation has relied on automation for decades. Cat 2, Cat 3 Autoland systems, flight management computers, auto throttles, fly-by-wire, and ATC directed separation have been standard for years. Pilots routinely manage systems that fly, navigate, and land aircraft with precision no human could replicate consistently. So this isn't about pilots rejecting automation. It's about when and where and how the automation is trusted. And what happens when humans are expected to intervene? The real risk is not automation itself. The risk is loss of situational awareness during that handoff. When pilots are asked to take control back from systems they didn't directly command or fully observe in real time. And aviation accidents rarely happen because automation exists. They happen when humans and automation misunderstand each other. Now extend that reality forward. Because if aviation is going to achieve Cat 4 or Cat 5 or Cat 6 capabilities, fully automated taxi, takeoff, en route management, approach, landing, and we're talking across all sector, commercial, business, GA, AI will not be optional. It's foundational because a human-only control cannot scale to dense airspace, and it can't handle mixed traffic or urban air mobility or future ATC demands. The resistance then isn't cultural, it's structural. And mechanics don't distrust automation. They distrust black boxes that can't be explained or audited or reconciled with physical inspection. And pilots don't reject AI. They reject systems that remove authority without improving clarity. And regulators don't oppose progress. They require explainability and traceability and accountability in environments where failure is unacceptable. And the challenge it isn't convincing aviation to accept AI. Aviation already has. The challenge is designing AI systems that enhance control without obscuring responsibility, that automate safely without degrading human readiness, and that integrate cleanly across all sectors of commercial, business, and GA, not just at cruise altitude, but on the ground, in the terminal environment, and in the most critical phases of flight. Until AI earns trust at those edges, right, of taxi and takeoff and approach and landing, adoption will be cautious, not because aviation fears automation, but because aviation understands exactly what's at stake when it goes wrong. That's not resistance. That's what we call professionalism. So, what does AI actually need to work? For AI to work in aviation, the technology itself isn't the hard part. The hard part is everything around it. And a good way to look at this is like Bluetooth, because Bluetooth works because everybody agreed on the same language. Your phone connects to your car, your headphones, your watch, not because they're from the same company, but because they all follow that same standard. No one company owns Bluetooth. No one rewrites it for their own advantage. And because of that, it works everywhere, quietly, safely, and in the background. Aviation data, it's just the opposite because every OEM uses different formats. Every maintenance system, all records, everything is different. And every tracking company stores data in its own way. And AI can't connect to that. That's chaos. And they can't magically make sense of it. So, FAA, if you're listening, and hopefully the big companies are too, because they're all big conglomerates, until aviation agrees on common data standards, a shared language, AI will always be guessing. It's always going to be in the back seat in our industry, and that's pretty sad. The second requirement is clear rules about responsibility. Right now, if AI gives bad advice, nobody clearly owns the consequences. And that's why AI is treated as advisory instead of authoritative. And until liability is defined and who's responsible for what when things go wrong by some decision AI makes, then adoption is going to stay slow. And the third, like we talked about, is security because AI needs to access your sensitive data, which includes crazy information like your flight activity and maintenance records and operational systems. That creates new attack surfaces. And aviation systems are already super vulnerable. I think we'll probably do a podcast about it because adding AI without serious cybersecurity, it's just purely reckless. And this isn't optional. This is foundational. And the fourth is human integration because AI has to be treated like new avionics. It's not a replacement for people. Pilots and mechanics and controllers need to understand what it does and what it doesn't do and when they're still in charge because the confusion at that handoff, that's where accidents are happening. And the fifth is regulatory certification. Aviation doesn't trust black boxes. I keep saying it. If regulators can't audit it and they can't explain it or certify it, it won't be widely used no matter how good the marketing sounds. Uh, this is just like any one of your Bitcoins, right? If you can't explain it, nobody's going to adopt it. And finally, trust, because one real world success will do more to advance AI adoption than a decade of panels and press releases. But there's a missing piece that most people don't want to talk about, and that's the law. Today, there's very little stopping someone from taking data that they don't own, whether that's through scraping it and repackaging it and selling it as AI. That hurts consumers, it distorts markets, it poisons trust. Until laws evolve to clearly protect data ownership and prevent unauthorized reuse, the bad actors will keep flooding the space with unreliable stuff. Be careful because AI doesn't fail because it's too advanced. It fails because the systems, technical, legal, cultural, aren't around it and they're not ready yet. And that's the part that has to change, and it has to change quickly. So, is aviation ready for AI? That is the question. And I think it's kind of a mixed bag. I think aviation is not ready for AI if we're dealing with records that are a mess and regulators that lack framework or lawyers that smell blood or liability that's unclear or cybersecurity that's super, super fragile. But, by this definition, aviation is absolutely not ready. But I think aviation could be ready for AI if we start with augmentation, not replacement. If we allow AI to do what humans are worst at, things like pattern analysis, if we limit AI where human judgment is essential, if we can standardize the data inputs, and if we can clarify who's responsible for what, we accept that transparency will improve safety. And we use AI as a co pilot for making decisions, not the pilot taking over. by this definition, I think aviation is closer than it might think. So let's talk about the future and what the next decade looks like, because I think here's what you can expect between now and 2035. Every major operator will use predictive modeling for power plants, avionics, and high failure components. Predictive maintenance will be number one. I think you're going to see a bunch of OEMs monetize the data. Telemetry across it will become or telemetry, I think, is going to turn into access. It's going to be like a paid subscription. So that's going to be their big paid product. And I really do think it's coming because I think without them monetizing that data, I think they're all going to have a real hard time generating enough revenue off of aircraft sales. And I think that data is too valuable. I think regulators are going to introduce AI oversight committees. And yes, I think we're all going to have a lot more paperwork to do. And I also think the ATC is going to begin incorporating real-time AI optimization under the Trump administration. I think you're going to see massive efficiency gains. And then I also think this is going to be a massive question for liability because, if AI replaces spreadsheet-based fleet management, which also will come, and it's going to come a lot quicker than people want to admit, and if AI can power market transparency and maybe it kills that narrative broker because you're not going to see a lot more manipulation and delusion in the market. The truth is that AI is still going to be slow to adopt. But I do think that you're going to see a lot of stuff move in certain areas very quick. And then I think you're going to see a lot of things maybe even back off in others. So again, training simulators, fully adaptive, fully AI. I think you're going to see a ton of AI fraud detection becoming standardized in pre-buys. And then the last one, which we actually have proof of working, and it is so exciting that I get to talk about this on the podcast because this is something we've all been waiting on. Will it really work? That is that AI co-pilot Autoland, because it's not going to replace pilots. It's going to augment them. And we have the first Autoland save and it came 6 years after the release. It's the same system in the King Air and the M600 and the M700, but it has never been used in real world flights or a real world scenario until now. And this literally just happened like last week. And it sounds like everything went perfect as it could, given the situation. A King Air pilot departed Aspen and came incapacitated over the Rockies. So this was on Saturday. So what date was that? The 27th. The avionics chose Rocky Mountain Regional for a safe touchdown. The aircraft system made outbound radio calls and declared a pilot incapacitation and the intention to land on runway 30. She, because I guess the voice is of a female, gave Tower plenty of advance notice, and the controller cleared the airspace for the fully autonomous arrival. And you can listen to the automated recording because it just passed the 10-minute mark on a live ATC recording. She said, aircraft N479 Bravo Romeo, pilot incapacitation 6 miles southeast of KBJC, emergency auto landing 4 minutes from runway 30 right. So the aircraft is now en route to PWA in Oklahoma City for full post-deployment inspection and to gather data for any necessary system improvement. But this is the outcome that we all hope for. And if we were faced with the same situation, this is absolutely what we would pray that, we had this system on board. And while I hope none of our members ever have to use the Halo system or an Autoland, I feel confident the system will work. I think it'll save lives. I want to thank Garmin for being a driving force behind this futuristic technology. If you are looking at aircraft and those models offer Autoland and you can afford it, if it's in your budget, it's a no-brainer, folks. You need to take advantage of this. This is literally George Jetson stuff, and we have it at our fingertips. So is aviation ready for AI? Not yet, but it will be. And when it is, the industry will be split into two groups because there's going to be the early adopters, the operators and MROs and even appraisers and brokers who embrace AI as a tool, not a threat. They'll operate more efficiently. They're going to be more safe, more transparent. And then there's going to be the other group. We'll call them the deniers, because the people who say, I don't need AI, I've been doing this for 30 years, these are the same people who won't said I don't need GPS. I don't need RVSM. I don't need to digitize my logbooks. And they're probably the same people that still stop at gas stations asking for directions because they don't have any ability to use their onboard navigation system. Look, they're going to get left behind. AI isn't here to replace you. It's not here to replace an aviation professional, but it is here to replace aviation professionals who refuse to evolve, because the future isn't human or machine. The future is human with machine. I keep saying it. And the players who understand that early, they're going to win. This has been episode 18 of The Truth About the Market. If this episode made you think or made you realize your data is a mess or you need help, congratulations. You're officially ahead of most of the industry. Reach out to me. I will help you. I will point you in the right direction. I will give you a list of the vendors I use to help digitize logs and get all of that stuff fixed. If you like this podcast, subscribe, share it with your team, tell a broker, tell a friend. Tell them, yes, machines are coming, and no, they won't save the deals they've been screwing up for years. No, I'm just joking. It's going to help. I really, really do believe AI in the right hands with the right group of professionals is going to be life-altering. And with that, until next time, I'm Jason Zilberbrand. This is The Truth About the Market. Fly safe and stay smart. If you found this episode valuable, take a second to subscribe and share it with someone in aviation who could use a dose of market reality. With thousands of aircraft appraisals completed every year, why trust anybody else? Go to vref.com to learn more.